Welcome back to the channel. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Anne McCaffrey's novella, An Exchange of Gifts, the first non-Pern book that I have read by her. But before we get into that, as always, I just ask that you please like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when new videos come on out. I try to get them out pretty regularly when I finish the books. By any means, I don't claim to be an expert critic because I'm not. Yeah, turn on notifications so you know when they come on out. Leave a comment down below whether there's a book that you might want me to read or talk about or review, or what you think of the videos or the authors or the series that I do. Leave that down below. I love hearing from you, and I always respond back. And spread the word. It helps me out, and I appreciate your support. So, An Exchange of Gifts. Again, like I said, this is my first non-Pern book by Anne McCaffrey. And for quite a while, I'm sitting there wondering what the whole point of this book really seems to be. Where is it going? Because we are following Mianne, who runs away from her home because she is basically being forced to marry somebody that she doesn't want to marry. And it's going back then amongst the common folk, and she ends up at this small little kind of hut that she decides that she's gonna stay at. But, and that's the but, she comes across a boy named Wisp. And Wisp, even though he's a boy and he's not very big, he talks more like an adult. He seems to have the mentality as more of an adult. But Mianne's trying to figure out a lot about him. She notices that he has whip marks on his back, and she's wondering what crime he committed to get that inflicted upon him. So basically, it's the two of them living in this hut and trying to make enough money to survive, to be able to make it through the winter. Now, we discover what Mianne's gift is pretty early on, and that's to make things that are in the soil grow, which is not something that she was encouraged to do at home either. So it was of a position of a female beneath her. It was more of a common folk. Your royal blood, you don't stick your hands in the common dirt, basically, is how it was seen. We don't know what Wisps is yet, because he's yet to say. He's like, you have your secrets, I have mine, we're not going to ask these questions. But she almost discovers what he is, what his ability, what his gift is, when she wakes up the first night in the hut and sees this big form sleeping. And she doesn't really think much about it. She falls back asleep. So we're going again through this, and they come across a forester. And Wisp has basically said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you appear to be my mom. You're a widower, or a widow, of a war hero that had 3 medals of honor. You're to try to talk like your nurse, sort of like an old Cockney kind of thing. hand, not so intelligent, not so precise, but, me, oh lad, kind of thing. Where Wisp then plays the wee little lad, her son. So again, we're going through this, and the forester says, "Okay, I'll let you stay here, but you gotta give me some kind of rent, and I want 3 coins, like 3 pennies." And Wisp says, like, is this for like the year? And the forester's like, no, it's for the month, or until I find somebody new that can do charcoal, and then you'll be gone, basically. So Wisp pulls out the coins, gives them to the forester. Now, here's where we first start to kind of see a little bit of what Wisp's gift might be. Because Mian sees, he doesn't give him pennies. She sees it as, like, rocks. But the forester sees it as pennies, and he pockets them. So what's going to happen when he finds out that they're rocks? And Wisp is like, he's going to think he lost those pennies. Basically. Still not saying what the gift is. So it's when they are at market, trying to sell. This is like the last market before winter. Wisp has gone a few times before, and he sold their wares. Unfortunately, he didn't get what he could have gotten for them, which distresses Mian out. In that, he says, "Well, then come with me." He's like, "Nobody's going to recognize you." He's like, I will make you look, I'll put like warts on your face that have like hair sticking out of it. Like, people won't even be looking at your face; they'll be looking at those things, So she decides to go, and he tells her, you kind of have to walk sort of hunched and not so frail, but it's nice to trip now and then. So she does that once accidentally, once as not on purpose. And it's at market she realizes, people they're not looking at me, because she's not, though she's not considered to be a like beautiful person, she's not really on the frumpy side either. There would obviously be guys that would be willing to say, "Hey, I'll take you," but nobody's looking at her. And then come in soldiers to the center of the market, and they hold up a poster of her. And it's not a very good likeness. She's like very drab in it. And this is where we really realize what she did in the beginning of the novella, when she kind of cuts herself. So there's blood, and then she buries kind of some clothes. She takes and tears it off and buries the bloody clothing in the ground in a shallow kind of grave, but with the clothing still being able to be seen. So it's believed that she is murdered. So the soldiers come in saying that there is a reward for the capture of the murder of Princess Anastasia. Now, for Wisp, this is a shock, because he doesn't know who she is. But he's tied to her in another way, and we'll get into that in a minute. All the while, Mian, or Princess Anastasia, is wondering, is Wisp going to turn me in? This is more money than he's ever going to ever had the chance of getting. Will he turn me in? But he doesn't. They end up selling all their wares, and it's as they are going back to the hut, there are soldiers they hear hoof prints, horse horses walking on the ground. So they take their wagon and they put it in bushes and they hide. And Wisp all of a sudden seems to be taller now. And he's not very happy with her. And it's because the Baron that she was supposed to marry was attached to Wisp, in a sense that Wisp was going to make this Baron look like a really good looking man. And that's where Princess Anastasia, or Mian, says, oh, wow, his gift is the ability to shapeshift and to make things look the way he wants them to look. That's why I looked horrible in the market. That's why nobody looked at me. He has the ability to change those things. So we see now what the gifts are, and she says she apologizes because she's like, you got beat because I refused. And Wisp is like, no, I got whipped because I refused to make him look the part that he wanted me to be. So we see that Wisp is an honorable man. Now, we figure at this point they're probably going to go their separate ways, right? Because, well, Mian wants to stay with him. Wisp is just like, no, you can do better than me. And she's like, no, between our gifts, me being able to grow in the soil and you being able to alter the way things look, it's perfect. We're perfect together. So that night they do the exchange of gifts. She cuts her hand, and he makes a little nick in his. Now I need to look in here because the names are so weird of who they really are. And in this, they put their wrists together and they bind their blood, and in that they exchange their gifts. And his real name isn't Wisp, it's Delane Zublas und Fearsome, which is very sounding German. And it's a long name. Her name is even longer. Anastasia de Salmer et Navarre y Cordova. So you can see why she shortened these things up, because they're long names. And after they join wrists, she feels the tingle of his gift going into her, just as he's probably feeling it going into him. And he takes her and he kisses her, which is what she wants. It's what she wanted earlier when he held her, when they decided they were going to stay together. But he didn't then. They do here. And then the novella comes to an end with that. And it's a kind of a happily ever after story, a fairy tale, basically. So I gave it 4.5 stars. And here's the reason why. It clocked in, the version that I read was about 90 pages long, the story. For the first 75 pages, I'm trying to figure out where this thing's going. Where, what's the point? I can't. Unless I'm missing something, and I can, because I'm not the most, like I said, I'm not an expert. But I just couldn't see where this thing was going. You gotta stick with the last 15 pages is where everything comes together. And I'm not going to doubt her anymore. But the last 15 pages is where everything comes together, and everything is kind of salvaged there. And they begin a new life together. Forever is basically the way that it sort of terms. So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting little story. Probably a day read, maybe 2, depending on your speed or how much you want to look into things. But I thought it was a good book. 4.5 stars. I gave it, and I would recommend it. I thought it was good. So yeah, 4.5 stars. So with that, again, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you know when the new videos get posted. Leave a comment down below. Like I said, I love hearing from you guys, and I always respond back. Spread the word, because it helps me out, and I appreciate your support. So until next time, as always, keep YouTube literate, and God bless.